everybody, and how are we? Welcome to the Court of the Edijester. What have I got here for you today? Well, we have a great article from Our Duty, which was published yesterday. It concerns puberty blockers. Now, you know as well as I do, celebrate good times. Real movement there from West Streeting yesterday and the day before in affirming that the puberty blockers is permanent now for the next 2 years until there's a review. But that still leaves us with a very difficult situation. And you can see here on the screen the impossibility of an ethical clinical trial on puberty blockers. I'm very concerned about this. It shouldn't be going ahead at all. I don't want gender to exist in any form. So we're sort of moving the goalposts of what we want to achieve at this point. The impossibility of an ethical clinical trial on puberty blockers, there it is. Okay? The clinical trial investigating the use of puberty blockers in children and adolescents, as heralded in the Cash Review, has reignited debates around the ethical and legal frameworks underpinning such research. Drawing on the principles of medical ethics, associated laws and insights from critical analysis such as GenSpec's letter to the UK Health Secretary, the BBC's coverage, and Andy Lewis's ethical critique, we argue that conducting an ethical clinical trial on puberty blockers is fundamentally impossible. Consequently, any plans to proceed with such trials must be abandoned. Now, you'll see that what they've done in the article here, the editor of Our Duty has put in that there will be, there's a letter there by GenSpec you can look at, the BBC coverage you can look at, and also Andy Lewis's ethical critique of the very idea. This is absolutely vital, folks, because this could very well be where the barricade needs to go up next. We've got until next year to begin our insistence that this must not happen at all. In fact, I think that the gender clinics that have been open should close, but that's just me. Medical ethics, a framework of principles. The cornerstone of medical ethics compromises 4 principles: autonomy, beneficence, non-maleficence, and justice. Each of these principles presents insurmountable challenges in the context of puberty blocker trials. So what's happening here with this Our Duty article is they're placing a lens over it with these principles and examining each one. And this really acts as a primer for us to understand what the problems are with attempting to have a trial for something I think we shouldn't be doing at all. It just the whole lot needs to be abandoned. I mean, it's not, and subsume all of the gender nonsense into people who are just simply not well, who need psychological help. So let's start with the first of those as mentioned here, which is autonomy. Autonomy demands informed consent. Yet the ability of children and adolescents to fully understand the long-term implications of puberty blockers is questionable. The hormonal interventions have irreversible effects on physical and psychological development, yet the evidence base for long-term outcomes remains inadequate. Parents, often positioned as surrogate decision makers, face significant pressure from clinical authorities and societal narratives, further undermining truly informed consent. I'm forced to ask myself, you can't consent to having a tattoo, or a gin, can you? It's just beyond me that this is even a thing. So saying here, truly informed consent cannot happen. That's what it's essentially saying. Then we can move then to beneficence. Beneficence requires that interventions offer clear and substantial benefits. The Cash Review itself highlights the lack of robust evidence supporting puberty blockers' efficacy in alleviating distress caused by gender dysphoria, which because I've said before, I don't think exists. I think it's just a morbidity of something else. Without a proven benefit, such trials risk violating the Hippocratic imperative to act in the best interests of the patients. Hippocratic imperative being firstly do no harm. Noli nocere in Latin. Firstly do no harm. That's how old the principle is. Noli nocere. And then non-maleficence. Trials must avoid harm. Puberty blockers, as acknowledged in the referenced articles, carry risks including reduced bone density, impaired cognitive development, and compromised fertility. Subjecting children to these known harms under the guise of experimentation contravenes the ethical duty to first do no harm. How can it not? Get up to speed, people. We need to know this. Justice. Justice demands equitable treatment and the fair distribution of risks and benefits. By targeting a vulnerable population, often including children with co-occurring mental health conditions, such trials disproportionately burden those least able to advocate for themselves. In other words, they're going for the weakest in society. They're going for the weakest. We then move on to the legal context. which is very interesting here. From a legal perspective, the principles enshrined in the Declaration of Helsinki, the Nuremberg Code, and the UK specific frameworks such as the Mental Capacity Act 2005 and the Gillick Competence Standard further underscore the impossibility of ethically conducting these trials. The Declaration of Helsinki: research on human subjects requires a favourable risk-benefit ratio, informed consent, and robust scientific justification. Puberty blocker trials fail to meet these criteria due to the paucity of long-term data and the known risks associated with the intervention. The Nuremberg Code. The code prohibits experiments where the outcomes are unpredictable or where there is a prior reason to believe that harm will occur. Given the CAS review's emphasis on uncertainty in the documented harms, such trials breach these foundational ethical guidelines. The Nuremberg Code goes way back. We know where that comes from, right? The experimentation that was carried out. This must be taken seriously. Gillick competence and capacity. The ability of minors to consent hinges on their understanding of complex medical information. As puberty blockers alter the trajectory of natural development with irreversible implications, it is implausible that children can grasp the full magnitude of potential outcomes. You then have the references that were mentioned, and then we have the conclusion. Puberty blocker trials fail to align with the tenets of medical ethics and legal standards. The lack of conclusive evidence regarding their benefits, combined with their known risks and the vulnerability of the population involved, creates an ethical impasse. Plans to conduct these trials should be abandoned, and focus should instead shift to safeguarding young people by facilitating families' efforts to overturn transgender ideation, supported by evidence-based psychosocial interventions. The risks are too great, the safeguarding is insufficient, and the ethical violations too profound to proceed. As stewards of adolescent welfare and the voice of affected parents, we must insist that the principles of medical ethics and law are upheld unequivocally. Anything less is a betrayal of the duty to protect the most vulnerable among us. And I could not agree more with the statement from our duty in what they're saying in regards to this. I was heartened to hear Wes refer to the need to pass stringent ethical standards in his speech in Parliament. I was at that point unaware whether it already happened or not. Now we know it hasn't. We know that this is going to happen in the new year. We'll need to watch this like hawks, folks, because if we can end this unnecessary trial, if we can end this based on the simple facts laid out in this article, we can then move the fight forward. And the next fight is to prevent the administration of cross-sex hormones to anyone for the purpose of feminization or masculinization under the guise of a transgender identity. Okay, so thanks very much for watching. You can follow our duty online. Buy me a coffee, usual stuff. I'll see you later. Thank you very much.